Hello everyone! Today I want to talk about crowd control in Final Fantasy 15. So this is something very interesting and let's start with explaining what it is. Crowd control is when you have to deal with multiple enemies at the same time on a battlefield, and how do you deal with this type of situation? This happens a lot in Final Fantasy 15, right? So I decided to make a tutorial about it. So first thing you have to understand about Final Fantasy 15 is that you can't stagger enemies that much in this game. This is not like, for example, Nier Automata, Kingdom Hearts, Devil May Cry, and Bayonetta, okay? This game you can't stagger enemies with your combos and make them staggered forever until you miss your combo or until the enemy's revenge back. So in 15 you have to use multiple abilities, techniques, movesets, etc. to control properly the enemies, okay? So to deal with multiple enemies at the same time, I'm gonna show you what each character can do when facing many enemies at the same time, okay? I'm going to start with Noctis, then I will go to the other bros, and later I will say some other things, okay? So let's start with Noctis. Let's start with something simple, which is magic. They are always AoE, and I recommend you using Tandaga, Blizzaga, or Faraga. It doesn't matter the one you choose, all of them are good. All of them affect a huge area, okay? But if you want to fight in the middle of the enemies, you shouldn't use fire because you can't reach the middle of the Faraga, okay? So try using the other ones for that situation, but overall just choose any of them. So one weapon that you can use a lot is the machine, okay? It explodes and usually stagger enemies, okay? It also has a huge area of effect, okay? And its counter is also very good for hitting multiple enemies at the same time. It's very good to use machines against Nilfheim soldiers, okay? So yeah, use machines when you are in this type of situation. Another weapon that is very good is the shield, because when you defend you can stagger most of the enemy's attack and even cancel the enemy attack. The parry and counter are also very good for crowd control because they hit multiple enemies at the same time, okay? You can use blink, which is when you defend at the last second, to even make the shield more powerful. There's also a royal arm that you can use, which is called Shield of the Just, and it is a shield but a much better one, okay? So this shield royal arm is extremely good and it's even better than the normal shield, okay? So don't forget to use it. Another thing you can do is use techniques. Many of them are AoE, area of effects techniques, like the one we've just seen, Tempest. You also have Cyclone from Gladiolus, which is extremely good when you are dealing with multiple enemies. You can see that swing there. There's also Impulse, which is the strongest technique from Gladiolus. It affects many enemies, so be sure to use it a lot when fighting multiple enemies. For Ignis you only have Sage Fire, okay? As you can see here, it burns many enemies, okay? And for Prompto you have Gravisphere, which is my favorite one from all of them. It pushes the enemies to the area and keep doing damage at them. You can do many things. You can use AoE attacks when Prompto does that, or you can even combine with magic. That is even more interesting, okay? Another thing you can use is parries and counters, okay? There are many weapons in this game that are good, like the sword or the great sword counters and parries. But some examples are Blade of the Mystic, which is a royal arm. The ones I showed before, like machines and shields, of course. There is also the Axe of Conqueror, which his counter is very good too. And there's also the Swords of the Wanderer and daggers. The reason why I'm showing Swords of the Wanderer is because they are bigger than daggers, so it works in a better way. So now it's the best crowd control you have in the game, which is the Ring of Lucii. Its Holly usually stagger enemies, and if you do it at the correct time, you can get a perfect Holly, which will make an explosion and usually make enemies vulnerable on the ground. This is the best thing you can do to crowd control in a game. The only problem is that not all enemies are affected that much by Holly, since many enemies have resistance to light, okay? But still extremely good. There's also two more things you can do with Noctis that I'm not gonna show because I don't want to spoil, and if you haven't played the game, I want you to see it for yourself. But there's Armigate Chain, which is a very special ability from Armigate. It hits a lot of enemies, but the whole party needs to be alive, okay? And not in danger state or something. And the summons, all of them are AoE attacks, so they are extremely good too for this type of situation. Now let's check Gladiolus, right? He's extremely good for crowd control. If you do the perfect parry, you can hit many enemies at the same time with very powerful attacks. And his shield also blocks almost everything, so he's extremely good. All his techniques are AoE, area of effect, okay? So all of them are good when you are fighting multiple enemies, okay? So just don't forget to use the Gladiolus techniques, okay? For Ignis, you have Ice, okay, which is very good for crowd too, and it's Total Clarity. The Total Clarity from Thunder is also good, but not as good as the Ice, so that's the only thing you can do with Iggy. Oh, and now finally Prompto. Prompto is also very good at crowd control. His bazooka is extremely powerful and usually make enemies vulnerable. You can also combo it with crack shot. Same for grenade. It doesn't do a lot of damage and it's magic based damage, but it can easily make enemies vulnerable on the ground. So Prompto is very good for crowd control. So that was pretty much it. Now I'm just gonna show very fast some things you can do when you want to avoid the multiple enemies, right? So if you want to be safe while fighting them, and what you can do is use ranged weapons like the Bow of the Clever. What I usually do is to aim at an enemy that is very far away, and then I keep shooting so the bow will hit multiple enemies one after the other. You can also use the pistol, but the pistol is very bad for Noctis. It's probably the worst weapon in the game, so I don't recommend you choosing it. So for this situation you should choose Prompto, right? Just use the pistol from far away or use the machine gun. The problem is that you can't phase with Prompto or auto dodge, so if the enemies go after you, it will be harder for you to evade. But yeah, Prompto has the machine gun and the pistol. Another way to avoid damage is by using Air Dance. The problem is that it is very expensive, right? So, but if you have it, you can use air dance at some enemies, not all of them, okay? At some enemies, so you will keep in the air and enemies will likely not hit you. At some enemies, it is not a good idea, especially at big enemies that can hit you in the air. Um, and also, don't try doing that at Nilfheim soldiers usually, because it doesn't work that much. But it is a good way to evade um the enemies when you are fighting many of them. But at the same time, it's very hard to do. It consumes a lot of MP, and it's a very end game ability. And before I end the video, I'm gonna show the ultimate technique for you to deal with multiple enemies at the same time, right? You just have to use the old girl to do that. So yeah, thank you very much for watching and bye bye. I hope this helped you, and if you think I should improve something, please tell me on the commentaries, okay? So yeah, bye bye, and let's wait for the PC version, right? It's almost there.